Welcome to One on One. I'm Greg Bassey, your host from the Salisbury Independent newspaper. It's a big day here at PAC 14. We have our mayor, Jacob Day. Welcome, Mayor.
Hey, Greg. How are you? Thanks for having me.
So you are so busy. When I look at the list of what you have going on, it really concerns me because I want to have a heart attack just reading the list. Where do you get the energy to do all this stuff? You have project after project after project. We're in the middle of the budget right now. You've completely restructured the entire city government. Start off, tell me what you did to restructure the government.
Well, let me back up, and I'm going to give you read access to my calendar, and then you're definitely going to have a heart attack.
Right.
No, I won't do that. I don't want you to have a heart attack. Yeah, it's busy. It's really busy, and in part, it's busy, extra busy right now because we are in the process of hiring a deputy city administrator, but we've been down one person up in the mayor's office for a long time.
Right.
As we transition Tom Stevenson to the operations section of the Public Works Department, and then Julia got hired as the city administrator.
Julia Glantz is a great hire.
She is fantastic. I was at her wedding this weekend.
Right.
With her, and one of her bridesmaids were students in my class at Salisbury University when I taught environmental policy there as an adjunct. And they were the best two students. They were just incredible, and they went above and beyond. They were also, I think, the president and vice president of the SGA at the time. Yeah. And those two were just fantastic. Never in a million years would I have guessed, 4 or 5 years from now, I'll be the mayor and she'll be the city administrator. Right. Never. But we've got a good team, but we're down a person, so we're hiring. Conducted our first interview this morning. So what did we do to reorganize government, and why in the world would you do that? We don't think that government as it was structured, Salisbury city government, which is very similar to most city governments around the country, at all reflected our goals or aspirations for our city. I think there were some structural barriers to actually being effective. Not all barriers are structural. Sometimes it's having the wrong people in the wrong position, or the right person in the wrong job and they need to be moved around, or sometimes just having people that shouldn't be part of the team. That I don't think was our problem at senior levels right now. It was really just about who's in charge of what are their directives, what are their goals. So we actually broke up certain departments. We split them up. This doesn't create an additional cost for us. It's
expense neutral.
It is an expense and revenue neutral plan. But one of the things that anybody who builds anything in the city, from a fence to a development down of a parking lot downtown, one of the things they'll find is they had to go through 5 departments for permitting through the process, and nobody's responsible for carrying it anywhere for them. There was no customer service orientation when it came to development and economic growth in Salisbury. So one of the objectives of this project was to actually consolidate and to create one entity in charge of all planning and permitting for the city, and all inspections of construction, everything related to infrastructure and development. And we've got the perfect person already in the city government for that.
Amanda Pollock.
Amanda Pollock. She is the Deputy Director of Public Works. She will soon be the Director of Infrastructure and Development. She will be the person in charge of all building in the city, for the city, and reviewing what the private sector does. She is customer service oriented. She comes from George Miles and Buer. She studied under Jim Thomas. She's knows how the private sector works, knows the pace of the private sector, and she's going to be very, very good at this.
And I think you should brand her as Amanda One Stop.
Amanda One Stop Pollock. We can give her a tattoo of that. Amanda's awesome. Yeah. And so we're actually creating a one-stop entry point on the second floor of the government office building. So we're reorienting staff toward that. And then there's three divisions. There's a planning division, there's an engineering division, and then there is a permitting and building permitting and inspection division. And each of those will have a variety of functions. But the core of this is that Amanda will be in full control of the rhythm of reviewing the status of everything being built in the city on a given day.
Now, being a planner yourself as a background, the planning division is really important to you. And the city really hasn't had its own planning department in a long time.
No, we haven't. And so one of the things that we've heard from the state and others is that that's something that we should do. But really for us, it wasn't about creating another department or getting rid of the great relationship that we have with the Planning and Zoning Department, the joint county-city funded Planning and Zoning Department, which is a county department, but
Right.
we provide funding. So we're going to continue to provide funding because we think there's a ton of value there. They do two things well that we want them to continue to do for us. One is a lot of long-range planning, and two is the fire inspection, fire marshal services. We're going to take over control and responsibility of those things, but we're going to utilize the county fire marshal for a lot of that work. That's just an important thing for us to do, and we think they do it well. There's a lot that they do well. There's some things we can tweak and improve, but there's a lot they do well. But internally, we want to have our own planners. We want to have people that are urban planners and urban designers and are doing projects that are critical for a city of our size, and the sort of projects that we've started to fund through contract work over the last few years. We spent $150,000 last year, almost $300,000 the year before, $100,000 the year before that on planning contracts, which was atypical for us. The only time we would do that typically would be a comprehensive plan.
Right.
But now we're getting into actually planning the projects as the precursor to engineering them, which is the precursor to building them.
Right.
And we're getting close to building a lot of things. Urban Greenway Master Plan adopted, City Park Master Plan adopted, Zoo Master
He's
Plan.
doing his list. This is good.
Yeah, that's right. Zoo Master Plan adopted, Downtown Master Plan adopted, Route 13 Corridor Plan adopted. These are all the things that we need to now start building out.
Now, your last budget last year, it seemed more of a capital expenditure type budget with a lot of big projects in it. This year, there's some drama in that you introduced a tax cut for residential homeowners, a tax increase for rental properties. Council's debating that right now. What's going on with the budget?
Well, nobody's talked too much about the fact that it's a more capital-intensive budget this year. We're building more things. We're spending a little less money, but we're building out the first phases
right.
of a lot of projects.
Right.
Carroll Street, Fitzwater Street, the Riverwalk, City Park, Urban Greenway, bike lanes, rail trail, a lot of really exciting things. And I mentioned that there were kind of three things about this budget that were really important to me. The most important, I think, those exciting things that I think create economic growth. Two, the reorganization of the city, which I think makes us more customer service oriented and more business friendly and more sensible, logical, and better functioning. And three, this idea of restructuring the tax rates. One of the things that we are under a mandate of as one of our goals that's adopted through the budget, was adopted in last year's budget and was adopted through our public goal setting session was we want to increase home ownership and decrease the number of single family houses that are rented in this city. So that's a goal that we have, and it's now incumbent upon us as leaders to do something about it. So one of the things that this budget did was it actually created a two different tax rates, one for commercial, multifamily, industrial, and residential properties that are rented, that are investment properties, and one for homeowner-occupied homeowner-occupied structures. The rate went down for homeowners. It went up for those others. To offset the increase on most of those properties, all but 219 multifamily properties, and then about 4,000 single-family homes that are rented. The remainder, so the 3,700 commercial and industrial properties, those were proposed to see a decrease in personal property tax and to see some other potential offsets
Right.
that we included in this budget. So there was a net decrease for homeowners and businesses. Now, the multifamily properties and the 219 of those, and then 4,000 properties that are single-family houses but are rented.
See, I never knew that number. I didn't know it was 4,000 because I know the rental is 69.1% in the city, which seems outlandish, but it might not be with all the apartment buildings.
Most
That's
of that's
fine.
Yeah, most of that's in
How many of
apartments.
the homes are actually rentals is the question.
Slightly more than owner occupied.
Okay.
Yeah, it's about 4,000 and 3,700.
Okay, so it's like 50-50
It's
for
about
that.
50-50.
All right, okay.
Yeah. And that's something that we've wanted to decrease and have more rentals. If there are going to be that many renters in our community, and most of them want to stay renters, we'd like them to be in multifamily structures.
Right.
And you could say that, well, the market will dictate that, and that's fine. The market's going to dictate that. However, we've got a directive from the public to attempt to steer
Absolutely.
the market a little bit,
Yeah,
which
absolutely.
is to create opportunities for home ownership. And before I get, sorry about the tangent, but the reason that that's important is, I think anyone, landlord or otherwise, police, anyone will tell you that home ownership is a stabilizing force in neighborhoods. And so it's a admirable goal in that regard. But that's still a little amorphous. The thing that's most critical to us is that you look at individuals who are living in our community, and what we want to see is them to invest in the community individually, more people to participate in that, and to build equity for themselves.
Right.
And to have an ownership stake and also build credit for themselves. I mean, those are both valuable tools as far as economic growth for our city. So that's something that we want to encourage. We want to see people, of less means own property. We don't want them to always have to rent. People who choose to rent, absolutely, they should be able to choose to rent. That's fine. I want to be clear that this is not it doesn't have to be impactful on renters. I recognize that some expense could be passed on, but this does not have to be something that's impactful to renters to the negative. So we actually broke down options for the city council. So we broke down a variety of options. I called it proposed, the mayor's proposed, a universal, so a flat rate for everybody, which actually is shown as a slight increase. We've seen big increases like 3 years ago, 2 years ago. This would be a very slight increase. And then we showed them several options that were like mayor's proposed, differentiated tax rates, but less of an increase and less of a decrease for homeowners and businesses. So closer to the middle. And they looked at all the options, they weighed them, and they landed on one that they preferred. To give you a sense of what we're talking about as far as the impact on if everything was just passed on from landlord to renter, we were talking about at the lowest level, so the lowest assessed value houses. And that doesn't necessarily mean they're being charged low rent. It could be a very cheap house and be charged a very high
Sure.
rent. There's no law that dictates what they would
Right.
charge. 8 cents a month is what we're talking about as the mayor's proposed. And all the way up to houses that were valued at $300,000 or more assessed value, meaning I don't know what in the world they'd sell for.
Right.
It was $17 a month. So, a big range, 8 cents, no one would notice. $17 a month, somebody's going to
So
notice.
the typical one's assessed between 150 and 200. That would be $8 a month.
Yes,
Yeah.
and at the level of most of the rentals though, so 85% of the rentals in Salisbury, 85% of the single family rentals are actually assessed at less than $100,000.
Right.
Think about that for a second. 85% of the rentals in Salisbury are assessed at less than $100,000. So most of them are not very high quality
Right.
structures. So so that means those people would experience about $1.50 down to 8 cents, 8 cents to $1.50 impact per month if everything was passed on.
Right.
Now I don't know how people set their rents, but I'm guessing that they don't increase rents $1.50 a month when they have to raise rents or they choose to raise rents. It's probably $10, $20, a nice round number. So if that's the case, if your rent goes up $10 a month next year, don't call the city, call your landlord.
I used to be convinced Mel Toadvine, the editor, would give me a raise. And the very next day, Bill Rainier would call me and tell me my rent was going up the same number. It was like
Collusion.
they were in cahoots. I just know that
collusion.
they were.
So yeah, so I think it's important to recognize that there is. I think there was a headline this morning about the plan drawing landlords' ire.
Yeah.
I feel that. I'm hearing it. I've presented alternatives. We'll see what the city council does. If they were to adopt the flat increase, it is a slight increase. I'd be willing to, it's easy to suggest.
Right.
It's so easy to suggest, cut the budget. There's fat in the budget. Well, it's a flat budget from last year. It's a flat budget. if we had kept a flat tax rate, we actually gained tax revenue. I'm not using that. I found an alternative means to even planning, but we lost some revenue. And we experienced some increases in expenses. We saw a 2% increase in personnel costs, all personnel costs in total. We saw a 2.25% increase in healthcare, so that didn't even include healthcare. We saw about a 2% increase in workman's comp. We saw a 4% increase in electricity this year, and I ordered a cut in operational expenses besides electricity of 4%. So we saw a lot of machinations to get to a flat budget. And that's not even mentioning all the programs that our city is doing and that my staff wants to be able to expand and isn't able to necessarily expand this year because I wanted to send a flat budget. And in order to do that, we saw some revenue decline. It required making up the decline in revenue. And I think we were incredibly frugal, especially looking at a 4% cut in operations citywide, in operational expenses citywide. I think we were incredibly frugal. And there's a great article. There's something called Strong Towns. It's a blog website and organization. Strong Towns is the conservative guide to planning in the United States. And I think as a person who considers himself fiscally conservative, I would say that there's a lot of good that comes out of that conversation about, well, let's be frugal and also figure out what investments actually produce results and which are just spending money and that are flashy things that don't produce results. There are a lot of those. And let's not spend money on those things. Let's spend money on the things that actually produce economic dividends for us. But one of the things that they produced an article on this week was the fallacy of government consolidations. And their thesis was, their premise was, well, one, look at all the 192 consolidations in the United States that have occurred and have been successful. Look at the 1,900 that have been attempted and failed. But look at the 192 that have gone through, and look at the economic trajectory of each of those places. And you're talking about declines in economic growth, and in some cases, economic contraction. It is a last-ditch effort of places that are failing, and it's in its simple form, and it's just let's consolidate, let's find efficiencies. Great, that's excellent. When there aren't those efficiencies to find, or not enough that will actually produce results, it's a problem. And we got to be more critical thinkers than just to say, oh, let's find an efficiency because we believe creating 1 out of 2 makes an efficiency. And I don't mean to get into the consolidation thing, except to say that the premise of that article and of these thinkers was, hey, look, the efficiency of local government is not the problem in most cases. In most cases, it's the resiliency and the failure to plan of local government and the failure to plan for economic highs and lows. That is our weakness. That is where we often fail. And all you have to do is look at layoffs at Wicomico County, furloughs in the city of Salisbury during the economic downturn, increased tax rates for the city, revenue cap being passed in the county. There's a whole bunch of strong reactions to the economy that we should be a little more prepared to be responsive to than we are. So I think our weakness is not one of government bloat and efficiency. It is, and I'm not saying that's true at other levels of government, but it's truly, I think, at a level of resiliency.
Well, your proactive style is different than in the past. My experience is that we wait till the bridge in the park falls down, then we build a new bridge, that kind of thing. But you have initiatives that are forward-thinking, and they're not just reaction to things that have gone wrong that we have to fix. It's moving the ball in a positive direction. So the rail trail thing, that sounds, people go, what is that about to me? And I think about when I was a kid in Salisbury, that was my mechanism. My road was that railroad track. I rode my bike everywhere. It was the way to get anywhere in town was up and down that railroad track. And you're going to make it into something cool now.
Would you do that today?
Absolutely. It's the way to go anywhere.
No, I mean,
oh, what?
Would you go up and down the railroad today as it is today?
I probably shouldn't have even when I was a kid, because underneath the overhead bridge, there was always weird stuff, but that's just the way it was.
But we should turn that back of house, mentality of that's the forgotten space and whatever happens there is okay. No, we should turn it into another front of house.
Yeah.
What happens when you're starting to turn everything into a front?
Yeah.
The bad stuff has very few places to go.
I got a call from one of my dear friends, one of the doctor's wives, and she goes, "You need to ask this mayor guy. He's going to build a traffic circle at Carroll Street, Riverside Drive." I said, "Yeah, it's going to be great." She's like, We're moving to Arizona." And I said, "You can't move out of town because of a traffic circle.
Right.
You have to look at the models. It's going to work." And she goes through there once a day to the Powerhouse gym. I mean, that's the only time she uses that road. But she's going to move to Arizona because she can't stomach a traffic circle. It's going to be a great thing.
Well, she's going to find some things about Arizona that she doesn't like. One of which is that I'll bet there's plenty of traffic circles. But that
She
means
even sent me a video of like a traffic circle in Rome where everybody's all screwed up. But something has to happen there, and we've all known it for years.
it's a terrible intersection. It is a failing intersection by its grade. It is a grade F intersection. It is a terrible, disastrous intersection. Let's fix it.
And this is Mill Street, Carroll Street,
That's right.
Camden
Mill, Carroll,
Avenue,
Camden,
Riverside
Riverside.
Drive. It all comes together, and at 5 o'clock, it is the place not to be.
And here's what I think we'll find is that there are a lot of people in the morning and in the evening who are trying to get from Riverside, in the morning and at the end of the school day, who are trying to get down Riverside Drive and onto Mill mostly.
St. Francis, when it lets out all those mothers and cars,
That's
yes.
right.
Yeah.
So I think what we'll always find is this isn't going to decrease volume, so you're still going to have a lot of cars trying to go through that intersection. But we've got a study underway right now by a firm that was hired, and we put out to bid. And this firm is analyzing it, has come to the conclusion that yes, you absolutely should do this. It will make the intersection improved. It will improve flow of traffic and reduce wait times in that intersection. And they went so far as to engage State Highway and say, "What do you think? Let's model all of the patterns on all intersections affected by this change or potential change."
Right.
And State Highway said, "You got to do it. You have to do this. They don't have the right to approve or disapprove. We support it."
And State Highway, who historically has been adverse to traffic circles.
That's right. However, something's changed there.
Yeah, well, Donnie's gone. Donnie Drewer is gone, but he admitted at the end that the Fruitland Circle worked.
They, State Highway, they not only support that, but they have encouraged and supported a circle at the Long Avenue, East Main, Mount Herman.
I've always
mess.
said that.
Yeah. So the 5 points.
The
5 points.
Yeah.
They even drew it. They even went so far as to design it for us.
Yeah.
Schematic design it for us.
In your restructuring plan,
Yeah.
I know that managers try to build like these big machines with cogs, and then they hire the cog that fits the big machine.
Sure.
But what you've done is you've selected the personalities and actually built jobs for those personalities, which takes a lot of work as a manager.
Well, so I think
Because just not anyone can do what Amanda's going to do in her position.
no,
Yeah.
Amanda's going to do it
takes
better.
a special skill.
You're right. However, one of the exercises we did was to erase the names and to just think about the areas of responsibility and the duties
Right.
without the individuals, and start to think about and it's led to some challenges for individuals saying, but I liked doing that. I'll give you an example. Our internal services department includes finance division, which is accounting, budgeting, operations, payroll, everything,
Keith Cordry.
everything, Keith
Yeah.
Cordry. And then it's also procurement, so our purchasing division, which is our procurement and parking division. So we have
Right.
parking under there as well. What? Why would you do that? Why would you structure it that way? So it's a restructure,
Right.
and so parking is being wrenched away from Jennifer Miller, who's another incredible person. Jennifer is going to be elevated to a department head. Procurement is going to be a department, because one of the things that I've found is that one of the ways that the wheels of government turn slow is when we have to go out to the private sector for services, and we want to describe what we'd like and say, hey, can you do this for us? And we've got to do it in a very careful way. You can't show preferential treatment other than the city's adopted preferences for local businesses and veteran-owned businesses. But otherwise, we can't show preference. So you got to be very careful about that. But if you don't have that procurement officer, that purchasing officer in those conversations early, you're always playing catch up.
Right.
So I've found that we're always playing catch up, and it's not Jennifer Miller's fault.
Right.
It's not Keith Courtry's fault, the Director of Internal Services, our soon-to-be Director of the Finance Department. It's not either their fault. It was our fault. It was our fault from a structural standpoint. So we're fixing that. And parking is now going to be actually a partnership between the police department, which will have the enforcement piece, the finance department, which will have the cash exchange piece, as well as the permitting processing piece, and then the field operations department, which is Tom Stevenson's department, which is going to manage the parking garage and parking lots, cleaning them up, maintenance, things like that. But you're so right in that the personalities that we have fit neatly into these responsibilities. Just look at Public Works. I mean, you've got, even Keith Courtry is the finance director. He's the guy I want.
Right.
He's the finance director I want. I don't want to lose him. Mike Molds. Mike Molds has a background in water and sewer and operations, wastewater treatment plant.
Right.
He's actually certified. He's got all the certificates. He's going to be the director of the Waterworks department, which is still the largest entity in the city.
Right.
And from a budgeting standpoint, from a personnel standpoint, he's got a huge section of the city. And then field operations. Tom Stevenson runs an incredibly tight ship when it comes to polishing the city. And that's
now,
basically their responsibility.
When grass isn't cut somewhere, I know who is responsible now.
Oh, man. Call him, too.
Right.
Call him.
Right.
It'll be cut before you get off the phone. He is on top of it. He is on top. And his crew, his team, Doug Draper and Doug Draper Sr. and the entire Parks crew is on top of it.
We're real short on time,
Sure.
but I want to do your homeless thing real quick.
Yeah, sure.
You put some money in the budget last year, didn't say a lot about it. I think you wanted to see if it was going to work. Last week we talked about it, and you've got some success here, some traction on this thing. Tell me real quick about the homeless program.
We're pretty excited about this. So what the city of Salisbury has adopted is Housing First. Housing First is a means, a program of housing chronically homeless people as the first act. So what it means is we've got Thea Williams and now Christine Chestnut. We've created 2 positions. They're out there in the world looking for, talking to, meeting with homeless individuals. They're also coordinating the work with the Homelessness Alliance of the Lower Shore, which is a collective of all of these nonprofit and private organizations that are running shelters, running programs to get people into housing, guiding people on how to get their finances in order and their documents in order. So this is a partnership. But what Housing First is housing first. It's not housing only. In other words, that's not the end of the line. You can't just stick somebody in a house and say, we're done. We're just going to pay your rent forever and we're done with you. No, your disability or Social Security or veterans benefit is going to pay in part your rent, and we are going to pay the difference.
And they all have some sort of income.
They all do.
Yeah.
They all have some sort of income. There's certainly substance abuse and mental health issues that we're dealing with, but now we've got a partnership with the Wicomico Health Department, which they're providing social work and case management for the individuals that we've housed. I was walking around the Camden neighborhood Sunday, as a part of our walk through. We're doing walks through various neighborhoods, and as a part of our charrette for the
It's some
Camden
ideas
Community
there
Center.
at the center, right?
That's right. So I was walking around, and we actually walked up to a house, knocked on the door of a gentleman who is one of our Housing First clients. So it's incredible. He is no longer living in the city park or under a bridge or on the railroad tracks that we talked about. He's living in a home, and he's got dignity.
Are you having fun being mayor?
I am. I really like this job. People always ask me about, well, what are you going to do next? Or, when are you going to run for this? Or are you running against so-and-so for that? I really like this job. I'm going to do this job for a long time.
He's Mayor Jake Day. He's our guest here on 101. We're always thrilled to have him in the building. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Greg.
I'm Greg Bassett from the Salisbury Independent Newspaper. Another edition of 101 right here on PAC 14.
First Shore Federal is proud to support PAC 14 and one-on-one. We'd encourage every business to support PAC 14 and pick a program and support it, and let's make a difference.